Robert Manning grew up in Washington State, where as a child he developed a love of NASA and the space program. He attended a private liberal arts college, Whitman College, that is not unlike our own Ohio Northern University. However, Whitman does not have an engineering program, so Rob pursued a 3-2 program that allowed him to complete his engineering degree at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California. As a student, Rob had an opportunity to begin working for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory as a draftsman for the Galileo spacecraft. After graduation, he started working full-time for JPL and spent his entire career contributing to the exploration of our solar system. Rob's greatest contributions have been associated with the exploration of the planet Mars and his efforts to land 4 spacecraft safely on the Martian surface. It all started with the Mars Pathfinder mission, which successfully landed in July 1997 and deployed the little Sojourner rover on the surface of Mars. Rob served as the chief engineer for the flight system and was the lead system engineer for Pathfinder's entry, descent, and landing system. Next, he led the systems engineering team for the Mars Exploration Rover project, and again, focused much of his time and energy on the entry, descent, and landing system. I had the pleasure of working with Rob at this time as a member of the Mars Exploration Rover systems engineering team and came to know and understand his brilliant mind as well as his patient demeanor. Spirit landed successfully in January 2004 and began to explore the complex geology of Gusev Crater. Then, just a few weeks later, Opportunity landed at Meridiani Planum. 3 successful landings in the span of 7 years. Wow. Believe it or not, the Opportunity rover continues to explore Mars today, well over 9 years since its successful landing on Mars and well past its original 90-day mission life. In 2004, Rob became the chief engineer of JPL's Mars Exploration Program and oversaw the technical development of all Martian spacecraft, including orbiters, landers, and rovers. However, Rob would be called on yet again to help with the next rover project, the Mars Science Laboratory and its Curiosity rover. The previous airbag landing system had been abandoned and a new and even more frightening landing system was devised. With Rob at the helm, success was achieved and Curiosity has begun what will be a long and exciting mission of scientific exploration in Gale Crater. Since its landing on Mars in August 2012, Curiosity has used its rock drill and scientific instruments to discover evidence that Mars had environmental conditions and ingredients that were favorable to microbial life. Rob is 4 for 4, all while carrying out his duties with grace and distinction. He has mentored many, myself included, and taught us how to be great engineers who, with a strong sense of humbleness and humility, attempt the impossible, yet succeed. Personally, I've been honored and blessed to have worked with Rob, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome him to the podium to present the 2013 Commencement Address, Mr. Robert Manning.
Partner. Holy smokes, he told me it was a small event. Well, President DiBiasio, trustees, vice presidents, deans, faculty, staff, alumni, and grateful parents, and thank you. Oh, and pensive and excited graduates, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this commencement. It's a real honor for me and a pleasure to be here and with you at ONU in Ada on this spectacular day, Mother's Day and graduation day on the same day. How cool is that? You know, graduation is probably the only day in your whole life where your mom will be proud to see you lounging around an afternoon wearing your robes. I know mine was. It's an important day to try to remember. So, you know, those of you in the audience, take a look. I mean, this may fade from your memory. Look to the people who are next to you. Memorize the faces. Look to your left, look to your right. Yeah. In fact, do me a favor. Turn around and shake the person's hand right behind you. Go ahead. How's it going? That's so good. Hey, you guys taught him a lot of good stuff. Good job. Thank you. Yeah, well, I know some of you thinking, oh, here I am, one of the most important days of my life. And I'm going to be getting another science lecture. Don't worry, you'll get some extra credit at the end of the class. Don't worry. Well, maybe you will get a lecture from me. I've got a little stuff for you, but or maybe some of you are thinking, hey, we whipped Notre Dame's football team with robots. Yeah, you heard about that, did you? Do you suppose I'm here to do a little scouting for NASA, maybe? Well, yes, we're always looking for good football, volleyball, soccer, and tennis team players. But that's not why I'm here. No. Maybe if you were thinking that I'm here to give you sage advice that will carry you with you every day of the rest of your life. I might even bestow upon you some great virtues like patience that will make every hour waiting in line at the BMV seem like a nirvanic bliss. No, sorry, I'm just an engineer. And I dropped out of bliss class. I mean, it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and whom do you know can bliss at that hour anyway? So, no, I'm not going to talk about those things. Instead, I decided to ask myself, what would I want to hear on the day I nearly graduated from college? Actually, no, I did graduate. But I almost didn't graduate from Caltech. As you can probably guess, I failed to complete my last required class, speech class. Honestly. I was just too nervous to stand up in front of a lot of people. So I told my professor that I promised to deliver a commencement speech someday. So, in a sense, today is my graduating class too. I hope I pass. Thank you. Yes, it's true, actually. Okay, so I tried to think back to my days in the 1980s. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember my graduation. I vaguely remember being interested in the speech, but I apparently was lost in a sea of annoying tassels. So this morning, I decided to Google and listen to the best commencement speeches in hopes of finding a commencement speech that would inspire all of us, including me. For example, I learned from Ellen DeGeneres that instead of today being a celebration of a new chapter in your life, the word commencement is in fact a contraction of two words. You probably heard this. Common cement. Yeah, that's what she said. And that graduation is a day that binds your youthful life with a long and exciting slog ahead. Yeah. So I also learned from David Foster Wallace's Commencement at Kenyon about his fish parable. Did you hear about that one? This is an old fish swims by a pair of younger fish. Morning, boys. How's the water? He says. They look at each other. What the hell's water? So Wallace is what he's saying. He's telling us the real value of a real education has almost nothing to do with knowledge. Sorry about that. And everything to do with simple awareness. And he reminds us that we have a choice of how and what we think. Giving my fading memory for knowledge, I think that's really good advice. So, by the way, you should really check out these Google Talks. They're online. They're really amazing. Not now. Later, I'm talking. You can see mine later. So I asked myself, what makes me who I am, as I was Googling, and I said, so I thought about it. I said, what my most annoying trait, other than giving talks, is my curiosity and zeal for learning. And I am a curious person. I love almost everything. So I looked up to zeal and decided that was a really good topic for this talk. So zeal it is, and this is a talk on zeal and why you should have some. But not too much zeal, that's called zealotry, and that's just going too far. No, you need just the right amount of zeal to inspire you enough to wake up every day for the next 25,000 mornings. Think of the number of hangovers that could be. Yeah. No. Ironically, by the time I graduated, my zeal had run dry, and it was almost a trickle. While I thought I would always enjoy engineering and science, by the time of graduation, I was beginning to get burned out, and I wondered whether I would ever find a bit of zeal again. Well, perhaps not as bad as it is today. Back in the early 90s, it was really tough time to find a job for an engineer. Fortunately, a friend of mine found a job posting for an electrical draftsman and a technician at the nearby Jet Propulsion laboratory. They needed help building electronics that would fly inside the Galileo spacecraft to Jupiter. And that's cool. I was scared. I really did not know anything about being a technician or a draftsman, nor really anything about engineering at all, but I got the job. Back then, in the days, not before the internet, before computers, that's how old I am, being a draftsman and technician really meant working hands-on. After a few weeks learning how to use a number 2 pencil and a mechanical eraser, which was the 1970s equivalent of Control-Z, some of you might think about that, they told me how to carefully draw in electronic part pin numbers for all the circuits on each of over 200 schematics. by hand. Wow, I was beginning to regain some of my lost zeal. But see, my zeal really came back one day when I was asked to help out testing the flight electronics. My new boss, Mr. Rousey, was short, tough, and he took testing seriously. One day he barked up from the lab, "Manning, come on down here. We're done testing. Put this flight electronic tray back into the flight stores." Carry it? Me? Really? Flight hardware? Wow, I was thrilled to finally be able to put my engineering talents to use. I would be able to hold and touch a piece of something that was destined to go to another planet. Think about that. That was really cool. I don't care. I was a technician. So donning the proverbial white lab coat, it was a lot like this except white, surgical gloves, wrist strap, and looking as nonchalant as I possibly could, I leaned over to take a close look. I could see hundreds of little circuits, each with the tiny pins I'd been spending the summer carefully numbering on the schematics. So I lifted the tray and put it in a large plastic container. And I stacked on top of it a book of data that sat on the top of the tray that had to go everywhere with the tray. I was very careful to stack them and pick them up. And I walked out of the lab and crossed the hallway to the room where all the flight electronics were being stored. That's when the horror struck me. The tray and this book took both of my hands. The storage room was locked. I had the key hanging on a big ring around my wrist. I turned to go back, but the door was locked. And I was in an empty hallway. There was nothing there. No table, no one around, nothing to put this electronic tray on. No one to grab my key. I was stuck holding $1 million piece of spacecraft and no place to put it. What to do? There was only one thing. I had to put it on the floor. Flight hardware on the floor. But I just couldn't. I had to keep it clean somehow. Even the container looked sterile to me. So I had to try something else. I lifted my knee and balanced $1 million worth of irreplaceable hardware. While I swung the key on my wrist, grabbed the key, found the hole, and used my whole body to twist it. By the third attempt, I finally caught it and got it in there. "Manning!" Rousey shouted from across the hall. The book took a plunge. The tray took a plunge. But I caught it with my knee. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Wow, that was a tough day. I had touched and nearly dropped something that was going to Jupiter. Another planet, a place from my childhood. I was finally an explorer representing humanity on a vast quest to learn more about our universe. With that touch, my zeal had been restored, despite my embarrassment. In the following decades, I've found myself working with some of the most amazing and talented people from around the country, around the world, many nearly as good as Dean Baumgartner. And he's really good. He's among the best. Of all these people, despite what he said, of all these people had a passionate zeal for the work and the idea behind what we were doing. Together, we learned how to build rovers, Mars rovers, starting with, as I said, little Sojourner rover, is a little this big. And then we built a Spirit and Opportunity in the 2000s, and now the colossal car-sized Curiosity rover, which is doing its job right now on Mars. It landed last summer. Along the way, I learned how to make giant 17-foot diameter beach balls, really, with a lander inside, that would bounce 14 stories on Mars. We had to test it using the world's largest vacuum chamber right up here at Sandusky, run by my friends over at NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland. We dropped it on this giant rock platform and bounced it to see whether or not these airbags would work. The chamber and others they have up there can simulate the very low pressure of Mars, and as well as the low temperature. So we needed something so we can actually simulate the surface of Mars, and that's where we went. We also learned how to design and test the world's largest heat shield, the world's largest and fastest supersonic parachute. It's huge, it wouldn't fit in this room, it's fantastic. We learned how to drive and lower a 1-ton rover to the surface of Mars in the slowest and gentlest planetary landing in history using a rocket-powered helicopter that we invented. That's cool. That's cool. It's cool for me, but I'm not sure it's for you, but it certainly was for me. This is what zeal's all about, it's about my passions. We have learned, or your passions, we have learned, and we're still learning how to use a drill and drill into a rock. We're going to start doing a second drill later this week, as a matter of fact. We've done one so far. I know we're slow. So after 33 years at JPL, almost 33 years, my well of zeal has not gone dry. But as I've gotten older, my zeal has been transformed. I still find it really fun to think something my teammates and I would have worked on might fly to another world. But now my zeals have come closer to home. Through exploring Mars, I've learned a lot about Mars and a lot about life on this planet, to be honest. To quote Elton John, we know that Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell. Well, it took us a long, long time, but we now think it wasn't so cold, so dry, or so airless just a few billion years ago. You remember that? Just a few weeks ago, we analyzed our first Mars rock, about 8 weeks ago now, today, using Curiosity's rover drill and its onboard laboratories. From that one drilled sample about the size of a baby aspirin, we confirmed that Mars was very Earth-like at the very same time that life was getting started on this planet. Like early Earth, we now think Mars once had a thick carbon dioxide atmosphere that allowed water to stand and roam over its surface. We now know that at least where the rover's parked today, the environmental conditions would have been able to support Earth-like microbial life had it been there. We still haven't found any life, but that's, we're getting there. Over the past few decades, we've also discovered that life got started on this planet really early, less than 1 billion years after the planets were formed. So for the past 3.5 billion years, a massive and beautiful web of life has been flowering on this planet. As you all know, we are part of that web of life. The single cells that inhabit nearly every square centimeter of this planet are our cousins. Very distant cousins, but cousins. Each of our bodies are fantastic, mobile, intelligent colonies of cooperating cellular siblings distantly related to every other cell on this planet. So our best guess is this fantastic web started right here on Earth, our beautiful Earth. What intrigues me, what feeds my zeal, is the question of why here on Earth? Why not somewhere else? Since we now know Mars is habitable, might Mars also support the invention of life, even before Earth did? Well, back in the 1980s, scientists discovered a very small number of meteors throughout the world that were different than all the other meteors. These are rocks that came from outer space. These small rocks contain trapped carbon dioxide gas, whose isotopic composition matched that of Mars' atmosphere that we had measured using the Viking Mars landers from the 1970s. These rocks, without question, came from Mars, and we have them in our hands. This rock in particular, one was actually unique. This rock in particular was formed very early in Mars history, about 4 billion years ago. About 15 million, just recently, well after the end of the, we think differently on this stuff, a long scale. Well after the end of the dinosaurs, a large asteroid or comet slammed into Mars and ejected this little old rock into outer space where it spent the last 13 million years circling the sun, minding its own business. At the end of the last ice age, only about 13,000 years ago, this rock finally bumped into Earth, crash-landed into an ice bank in Antarctica where it waited to be found by scientists. Inside this rock were tiny, delicate, microscopic, really tiny, delicate carbonate structures that were formed long ago on Mars. At first, scientists thought, hey, this might be a sign of ancient Mars life. But later, most scientists concluded these structures in that meteor were probably caused by geological processes. So, although not a sure sign of alien life, this and the other Mars meteors did something else very powerful to our way of thinking. They taught us that nature invented the first spacecraft. Rocks thrown back into space as a result of large meteor or comet impacts into planets are become spacecraft that can transport delicate cargo across the solar system from one planet or moon to the other. Isn't that amazing? But how can an organism get into the rock in the first place? Well, we've learned that on Earth, hundreds of meters below our feet below us right now, are vast masses of simple cells that live in the crack and rock. In fact, it might be that the total biomass on this planet below the Earth's surface could exceed the life above the surface. We also now know that the giant asteroid impact in the Yucatan Peninsula that killed off the dinosaurs 65 million years ago also launched off many millions of tons of rock. Much of this rock and the life that it contained were ejected from Earth. Once away from Earth, they traveled all over the solar system, landing on the Sun, the Moon, Mars, and even the outer planets and their moons. Over billions of years, this has happened hundreds or thousands of times. Could it be that if we found traces of ancient life, single-cell life, in far-off corners of our own solar system, that it actually came from Earth? Could it be that our tiny astronaut cousins are ahead of us? But these spacecraft do not provide first-class seating. No, it's out in space, it's cold, and it's full of damaging radiation. Could a cell survive a multi-million-year interplanetary journey? And would it survive after landing on a new planet? Well, we don't know. But we know that it's possible for rocks to protect certain types of cells from dangerous radiation in space. And we know that certain cells can hibernate in a sporophoric state for thousands or maybe even millions of years. We think some Earth microbes can even survive a hot entry and hard landing onto another planet like Earth or Mars. Mars has also had large impacts. If life got started on Mars long ago, is it possible that life on Mars could have traveled intact to Earth many times over the vast history of billions of years? Could it be that life got its foothold on Mars first and then seeded Earth where it finally flourished here while Mars' surface became less and less habitable? Could it be that all of us are Martians? There's one. We're not, but you are. I doubt it. It's fun to think about, and it's probably wrong. But it tickles my zeal whenever I think about it. So thinking about how we might fit into the never-ending story of life in our solar system is one of the many things that help me wake up in the morning. Of course, there are many paths we can walk that develop passion and zeal. Music, art, research, teaching, sports, business, family, school, friends, your spiritual life, all of these are possibilities. And as a graduate and a fellow mobile, intelligent colony of cells that you are given a both great responsibility to care for the world around you, as well as a remarkable and singular gift to choose your path ahead. Take the responsibility and relish your choices, and I hope you too will find a way to feed your need for zeal. Thank you.